The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
This hits close to home for a lot of people. People are grieving and mourning their friends.
New developments tonight in the investigation into the deadly shooting at Brown University. The latest evidence as police continue to hunt for a suspect in the weekend attack. Then,
we're getting closer. We're having tremendous support from European leaders. They want to get it ended also.
The United States is committing to new security guarantees for Ukraine. What this could mean for ending Russia's invasion. Plus, Washington residents are ordered to evacuate immediately as severe flood risk persists. The warnings in place now after historic flooding. Good evening. I'm Taylor Murray. Welcome to the National News Desk, America's News Now. A weekend of violence here at home and across the world, including mass shootings and a deadly attack on U.S. service members. We begin with the latest on the manhunt for the suspect in the deadly shooting at Brown University. Right now, the shooter remains at large and the search continues. Take a look at this. Investigators believe this new surveillance video shows a person of interest from a new angle. Just yesterday, police detained a man and then released him, which the mayor of Providence, Rhode Island, called a setback.
Obviously, students on campus, but also, and equally important, the residents in my city. I think we all got our hopes up that maybe this was the person. And so there's more of an emotional setback that has occurred.
As the killer remains on the loose, the university is mourning. Multiple memorials are growing on campus. 2 students were killed, 9 others hurt in Saturday's attack. Well, new tonight, the Hollywood legend Rob Reiner's son has been arrested after his parents were found dead in their L.A. home.
They worked throughout the night on this case and were able to take into custody Nick Reiner, a suspect in this case. He was subsequently booked for murder and is being held on $4 million bail.
32-year-old Nick Reiner taken into custody Sunday night after Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle were slain in what authorities are investigating as a homicide. Authorities have not elaborated on how the victims died or how investigators determined their son was responsible. Rob Reiner is considered one of the best American filmmakers of all time. His directing credits include classics like Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, and A Few Good Men. He was 78 years old. His wife, Michelle, a photographer, was 68. We now know the 2 U.S. soldiers who were killed in this weekend's ambush attack in Syria were members of the Iowa National Guard. The Army says Sergeants Edgar Brian Torres Tovar and William Nathaniel Howard were killed along with a U.S. civilian working as an interpreter. Now, the gunmen attacked U.S. and Syrian security officials while they were having lunch. The military says the attacker was a member of the Islamic State. He was killed. Today, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth echoed President Trump's response by saying the U.S. will respond with, quote, overwhelming force. Developing now, 4 people have been arrested, accused of planning a New Year's Eve bombing in California. Federal authorities announced the arrests, which were made last week in Lucerne Valley, east of Los Angeles. The suspects are accused of preparing to test explosive devices ahead of the planned bombing. The Department of Justice and FBI says they are members of an offshoot of a far-left pro-Palestinian group called the Turtle Island Liberation Front.
The subject arrested envisioned planting backpacks with improvised explosive devices to be detonated at multiple locations in Southern California, targeting U.S. companies. These bombs were to blow up at the same time on midnight this New Year's Eve.
The 4 defendants arrested face charges of conspiracy and possession of a destructive device. Prosecutors allege they had multiple targets in sight, including targeting ICE officials. Well, Australian leaders are considering changes to their already strict national gun laws after yesterday's mass shooting. Police say 2 suspects fired at a Hanukkah by the Sea event on Sydney's Bondi Beach. At least 15 people are dead and at least 38 people are hurt. Australia's Prime Minister is proposing restrictions like limiting the number of guns a licensed owner can have and reviewing licenses over time. Another Australian official says his state's gun laws should change.
I want to make sure that legislation and reform that we bring to Parliament makes a big difference, but that's exactly my intention, and my colleagues feel exactly the same way.
And police shot the two suspects, a father and son. The Prime Minister says the 50-year-old father died at the scene. His 24-year-old son is in a coma in the hospital as of today. Well, the tragic attack is now bringing anti-Semitism concerns back into the focus worldwide. The National News Desk, Kayla Gaskins explains.
The start of Hanukkah. It's supposed to be a time of celebration for Jewish communities around the world. But tragedy darkened this 8-day festival of lights when two gunmen opened fire at a Hanukkah celebration in Australia's Bondi Beach, killing at least 15.
An act of anti-Semitism, an act of terrorism on our shores.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Australia's decision in September to recognize Palestine as a state rewarded not only the terrorism of the October 7th attacks, but also anti-Semitic sentiment cheered by some of the protesters, including this crowd in Sydney, which some heard as "gas the Jews," but others insisted they said, "Where's the Jews?" Jewish leaders say both possible versions of the chant outside the Sydney Opera House are highly problematic.
Your government did nothing to stop the spread of anti-Semitism in Australia. You let the disease spread, and the result is the horrific attacks on Jews we saw today.
It's a charge Australia's leader strongly rejects.
Do you accept any link between that recognition and the massacre in Bondi?
No, I don't. And overwhelmingly, most of the world recognises a two-state solution as being the way forward.
The Bondi Beach attack is the latest and deadliest in a string of anti-Semitic attacks worldwide. In the UK, a terrorist attacked a synagogue on Yom Kippur. In the U.S., 2 Israeli embassy staffers were shot and killed in Washington, D.C. this past May. In June, a man threw Molotov cocktails at a group of Jewish demonstrators in Boulder, Colorado. And during Passover, the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania was set on fire. Governor Josh Shapiro is Jewish. The latest hate crime report from the FBI released in August shows anti-Jewish hate crimes in the U.S. are at the highest level since the FBI began tracking that data back in 1990. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he and his team are working with American officials around the clock on a potential deal to end the years-long war. The major sticking points are over territorial concessions and post-war security guarantees from the U.S. and Europe. The National News Desk, Audrey Nashar reports.
Attempts to broker peace in Ukraine, bringing Ukrainian and American leaders to Berlin. Monday marking day 2 of talks between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and President Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who sat down with Russian President Vladimir Putin 2 weeks ago.
We're working on seeing if we can make a deal right now. We're gonna see. We'll soon know, I guess.
As Russia's invasion could stretch into its 5th year this February, Ukraine is under pressure by the Trump administration to make concessions. Zelensky now walking away from his longtime push for Ukraine to join NATO.
It would have been clear how NATO membership could have worked for Ukraine anyway, but from the U.S. side, we have now heard that there will be security guarantees from the U.S. that are similar to NATO's collective defense pledge, Article 5.
Nothing is formalized yet, but German Chancellor Friedrich Merz says the security guarantees the U.S. put on the table are considerable and signify distinct progress.
I think it's the first time since the 24th of February 2022 we see a real opportunity to pave the way towards peace.
The biggest open question remains: how might Ukraine's borders change in order to end the bloodshed?
The question of territory is an extremely painful issue for us. I mean, Russia has its own list of wishes.
Merz says these talks are bringing the U.S., Ukraine, and the EU closer than they've ever been to a consensus on a peace plan.
So it's just down to Russia whether or not we manage to achieve a ceasefire by Christmas or not.
Now, when the Kremlin was asked about the hope for achieving a ceasefire by Christmas, a spokesperson said trying to predict a time frame is a quote-unquote thankless task.
Now, Audra, what more do we know about what was said in those talks between Zelensky and, of course, U.S. officials?
Well, in a new statement, Zelensky was pretty blunt about the work that remains. He said he's grateful to be engaged in these talks with Witkoff and Kushner, but he says that they could have been more productive if they had started earlier. And he says, quote, "There are some things that, in my view, are destructive and would definitely not help us. It is important that they are no longer present in the new version of the documents. This matters because dignity matters."
In Washington, D.C., Atra El-Nashar, thank you.
What say the jury? Is the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Guilty of what, sir?
Murder in the first degree.
Brian Walshe has been convicted of first-degree murder in the death of his wife, Anna Walshe. The Massachusetts jury deliberated about 6 hours before returning the decision. You can see him being led out of the courtroom in handcuffs after the verdict came down. Walshe is expected to be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, that's the mandatory punishment for first-degree murder in Massachusetts. Prosecutors say Walshe killed his wife on January 1st, 2023. Walshe has denied killing his wife, but has pleaded guilty to misleading police and illegally disposing of her body. He's expected to face additional prison time for those convictions. Well, federal courts are now weighing whether California's new congressional map designed to help Democrats flip red seats can be used in future elections. The map was approved by voters last month. But today's hearing centers around a lawsuit seeking a temporary restraining order. The judges will likely issue a decision by this Friday, the day candidates can take the first steps to run in next year's election. Coming up, a new designation for fentanyl that will allow authorities to go after drug traffickers more aggressively, what the president signed today. Then dangerous conditions persist in Washington state, the latest forecast following historic flooding. Plus, human trafficking, it's a risk to children and teens who run away from home, and it's rising in numbers. Stay with us.
With this historic executive order I will sign today, we're formally classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction.
A new designation for illicit fentanyl and its core precursor chemical. The president announcing the executive order from the White House today. Now, the order will direct the Attorney General to immediately pursue criminal charges and sentencing enhancements in fentanyl trafficking cases. It also allows the Department of War to provide enhanced national security resources to the DOJ as necessary during an emergency situation involving a weapon of mass destruction. Also over at the White House today, the president participating in a Mexican border defense medal presentation.
We're here to honor our military men and women for their central role in the protection of our border. We'll officially recognize their service by awarding them the Mexican Border Defense Medal.
The medal was established to recognize service members deployed to the U.S. international border with Mexico. Residents in 3 Seattle suburbs are under immediate evacuation orders after days of heavy rain caused a levee to break. This comes as more heavy rain slams western Washington, and rivers are expected to rise again following historic flooding last week. Now millions of people are under flood alerts and millions more under wind alerts. Another 2 inches of rain along with power outages are possible. More Americans now view healthcare costs as one of the country's primary problems. This is according to a new Gallup survey. 29% of respondents view the cost of healthcare as America's most urgent health problem. That's up from 23% last year. Only 16% of respondents said they were satisfied with the cost of healthcare in the U.S. House lawmakers will put up a health care bill for vote before they leave D.C. this holiday break. The Senate, of course, failed to pass 2 different proposals last week. The National News Desk Matt Gelka reports on the race against the clock as millions could see their insurance costs double.
Millions of Americans could see their Affordable Care Act health care premiums spike in a matter of weeks. Premium ACA subsidies are set to expire at the end of the year. The Senate failed to advance 2 potential deals last week, and affordability concerns are top of mind for both parties. Louisiana Republican Senator Bill Cassidy thinks there can still be room for a compromise.
The first thing, though, is to diagnose the problem, speaking as a doctor. And to diagnose the problem, you've got to address the issue of the out-of-pocket, which is so high for so many that they just cannot get the care they need.
Republicans have been trying to shift away from the premium subsidies that make the ACA more affordable. A temporary extension was passed with COVID-era legislation that's set to expire at the end of this year. The GOP is hesitant to make them permanent because of cost and a system that's been abused with fraud. Democrats say Americans will sacrifice their own health because they can't afford it without the tax credits.
People in red districts and red states who will be disproportionately impacted by these premiums that are set to double in a matter of weeks.
Analysis from KFF shows that people in Florida and Texas will be hit with the most sticker shock if the subsidies expire at the end of the year, followed by California. 6 of the top 10 states that have the most people enrolled in Obamacare are governed by Republicans. The House is set to vote on a Republican proposal this week that would do things like allowing small businesses and self-employed people to get health coverage through association plans, and also implement cost-sharing measures that lower premiums for some but raise them for others.
The Democrats broke America's health care system 15 years ago when they came out with that Obamacare proposal, the Unaffordable Care Act. It did exactly the opposite of every single thing they promised.
The House bill does not include extending the premium tax credits, but an amendment could be filed to do just that. A bipartisan group of moderate Republicans and Democrats have shown support for a short-term extension. Reporting in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
Sales of vinyl records are up around 18% annually since 5 years ago. That's according to a new report from Future Source Consulting. Now, their analysts say this is largely because of Gen Z. Most Gen Z music fans say they like the aesthetic of records. Taylor Swift also helping to boost sales. 5 of her albums were among the top 10 best-selling vinyl albums last year. We have reporters all across the country and your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We're taking a pulse of America, and we start with an uptick in violent teen crime in Utah.
After a deadly shooting on August 31st that killed 1 man and left a 5-year-old girl and another adult bystander shot, which led to the arrest of a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old on murder charges, the Weber County Sheriff's Office put out this statement, saying they were, quote, frustrated by the level of violent crime committed by juveniles in their community.
Kids are in possession of firearms, committing really violent acts against others.
The Sheriff's Office cited statistics from the Utah Commission on Criminal and Juvenile Justice. In fiscal year 2023, there were 51 firearm-related offenses by juveniles in the state. That rose in 2024 to 210, a roughly 310% increase in 1 year.
It is frustrating. It's sad, with them being so young, having children just get their life taken away like that.
I definitely think it's getting worse.
Families, city organizations, and veterans themselves sponsored hundreds of these balsam fir wreaths sent by the National Wreaths Across America organization. They joined more than 2 million people around the world Saturday in recognizing the names written on these graves, some of whom died centuries ago. The memorial began with a salute to each branch of the military, followed by a performance of the Star-Spangled Banner. As they stood in below freezing temperatures, volunteers were reminded how soldiers endured far worse in the battles of the past and how we can all unify around our respect for them.
The soldiers that have sacrificed so much, it's a good thing to help maybe bring us together a little bit.
The Friends of Oakwood Cemetery brought the wreath ceremony to Allegan. Location coordinator Amanda Strickfaden says the final resting place of nearly 1,000 veterans are in Oakwood from the War of 1812 through Operation Desert Storm. They encouraged volunteers to say the name written on each headstone out loud.
It gives them a chance to honor a veteran, whether they know them or not.
Coming up, children who run away from home are at higher risk of being trafficked. We speak with a survivor right after this. Children and teens who run away from home are among those at highest risk of being targeted by human traffickers. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children reports 1 in 7 runaways is likely to become a victim of sex trafficking. Spotlight on America correspondent Angie Moreski is investigating this dark and complicated world and talked exclusively with a survivor.
On the outside, Ori Freeman looked like a happy child, but that sweet smile on her face at age 11 defies the trauma she was experiencing in her young life.
I was 11 years old, fearless because I had nothing to fear. When you're 11 and 12 and 13 and 14 and you being raped every night, what you got? What you scared of death? It's knocking at your door every day.
Born in a California state prison, her birth mom serving time on murder charges, Ori, baby 50624, was adopted by a single mom into a troubled home. First molested, she says, at age 5, and by 11, a runaway.
I was running from the fact that my home wasn't safe.
A friend introduced her to a man who became her trafficker. She confided in him all she'd been through before he turned on her, forcing her onto the streets that very first night.
He drugged me out the car. It was like, you think somebody coming to save you? Ain't nobody coming to save you. Don't nobody want you.
For the next 4 years, she was physically and psychologically controlled by a trafficker who branded her as his property.
I had literally got this tattoo of my trafficker's name on my neck at 12 years old.
It's alarming.
Melissa Snow is executive director of child sex trafficking programs at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. She says what's truly stunning is just how common child sex trafficking is across the nation.
There's really no community that's exempt from this crime.
In 2024, nearly 30,000 missing children cases were reported to the center. 92% were children who ran away, making them prime targets for traffickers.
They swoop in and they fill the void that is occurring in that young person's life, and they do it extremely well.
Once a child is lured into this dark world, getting away is complicated.
There's usually something that we call a trauma bond that is formed between the survivor and the trafficker. There's also a lot of fear that's put into that child of, if you do this, if you talk to this person, if you tell them this, right, I will not only find you and hurt you, but I will also find and hurt anybody that this kid still cares about.
How do you get out? It just requires a child to have a lot of consistency and a lot of love. And it has to be unconditional.
For Ori, the breakthrough came after she was arrested and placed in a group home where one person, case manager Jim Carson, made all the difference.
He was straight from Brooklyn, and he wasn't scared of me. His love restored me back to normalcy.
Today, Ori is giving back as an anti-trafficking advocate and foster parent. Now 30, her life is in a much better place. Mom to a beautiful 7-year-old daughter, a proud college graduate, and engaged to be married.
It's not the trauma anymore. It's all of the beautiful things in life that are a gift.
For Spotlight on America, I'm Angie Moreski.
Powerful story there. All right, coming up, Merriam-Webster's Word of the Year is in, and it may not be one you're too familiar with. I'm going to break it down for you after the break. Well, Merriam-Webster's 2025 Word of the Year is slop. Yes, slop. And if you don't know what this means, you're not alone. I just learned myself, so let me explain. Yeah, it's a reference to the proliferation of obviously fake content online produced by generative artificial intelligence. I'm sure you've seen things like this. Slop can be anything from creepy videos, maybe those weird advertising images, to cheesy propaganda or fake news that looks real. Oh boy. All right, that does it for this edition of the National News Desk. We invite you to join us again this evening. I'm Taylor Murray. Thanks for watching.